Camilla's private lawyer was found inside Windsor with confidential documents. A royal summit was cancelled. Then silence. What nobody knew at the time was that this wasn't a security breach. It was a constitutional reshaping of royal power, and William and Catherine had already decided the outcome. On August 9, 2026, a Windsor summit is abruptly cancelled. Camilla's private lawyer is discovered inside with confidential documents. William's response is immediate. All Camilla-related proposals locked down, communications restricted, private lawyer access removed entirely. But this story doesn't start with the cancelled summit. It starts with a centuries-old question at the heart of British royal tradition. What does it actually mean to be a surviving consort? In British royal history, a surviving consort retains title, dignity, and family standing after a sovereign's death. Those three things have never seriously been in dispute. William and Catherine have never challenged them either. But the contested question, the one quietly building inside Windsor for years, is whether a surviving consort also automatically inherits something far more powerful than a title. Whether they inherit a separate court, independent staff, an institutional household with its own budget, its own authority, and its own line of operational power running parallel to the new sovereigns. That is a completely different thing. And historically, it has mattered enormously. People thought they had the full picture. They were wrong. When a dowager consort has maintained a second working household after a sovereign's death, the result has been a parallel power centre inside the monarchy itself. Two courts, two sets of loyalties, two institutional structures competing for influence, access, and precedent. The history of the British monarchy is littered with examples. Advisors split between competing households, staff caught between conflicting instructions, public messaging pulled in two directions at precisely the moment when unity is most critical. Maintaining two fully operational royal households means independent staff structures, separate security arrangements, parallel communications offices, distinct charitable and ceremonial functions. The annual overhead for a fully staffed royal household runs into the tens of millions of pounds. That's the kind of number that makes accountants cry. And the cost is not merely financial. It fragments the monarchy's identity at the precise moment when that identity needs to be singular and clear. Everything was in place. Camilla's allies just didn't know what everything was building toward. But William wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because what William and Catherine have now formalized is not a preference or a suggestion. It is a structural rule. The next reign will have one sovereign and one central working household, with no parallel court, no second institutional structure, no separate budget line for a dowager consort's independent operations. A second working household also creates ambiguity about authority. Who speaks for the monarchy? When two courts send different signals, even subtly, even unintentionally, the damage is immediate and lasting. William's position has never been personal. It is a structural rule applied universally, regardless of who occupies the position of surviving consort when the transition comes. But the structural rule was only half the move. The other half was even more decisive. Up to this point, the principle had been William's position alone. That was about to flip. On August 18, 2026, the principle is finalised. No surviving consort automatically keeps a separate court or independent staff structure in the next reign. The rule is documented, and it carries the full institutional weight of William and Catherine's household behind it. But it is what Catherine does next that transforms this moment from a strategic decision into something far more powerful. Catherine explicitly agrees that the rule applies equally to her own future. If William dies first, if Catherine finds herself in exactly the position Camilla will one day occupy, she accepts the same constraints, with no separate institutional household, no parallel court, no independent staff structure of her own. She places herself inside the rule, fully and without reservation, in the same moment the rule is being applied to Camilla. Think carefully about what that move actually does. Before Catherine's self-inclusion, the principle could be framed, however unfairly, as a targeted action against one specific woman. Camilla's allies, and there are still powerful ones inside Windsor, would have argued that the rule was not constitutional principle at all. It was personal animosity dressed in institutional language. Catherine closed that opening completely. By stepping inside the rule herself, she removed the argument before it could be made. The rule is universal. It applies to every surviving consort in the next reign and beyond. It applies to Catherine herself. There is no personal targeting. There is only a structural principle applied equally to everyone, including the woman who helped create it. Palace insiders describe this as the move that made the decision impossible to publicly challenge. Not difficult, impossible. Because any argument against the rule now requires arguing that Catherine was wrong to apply it to herself, and that argument collapses under its own weight. You cannot claim the rule is unfair to Camilla while simultaneously arguing that Catherine should not be bound by it. The self-inclusion was not a concession. It was a masterstroke. It transformed a strategic household decision into an unassailable constitutional principle, one that Catherine herself validated by accepting its constraints on her own future. And in doing so, she demonstrated something the palace has been watching closely for years. She is not simply William's partner in this transition. She is its co-architect. Picture a room where the furniture stays, but the function changes entirely. The title remains on the door, but the authority behind it has been formally redefined. That is precisely the situation Camilla now faces, and the distinction matters more than it might initially appear. Under the finalized rule, Camilla keeps her title. She remains Queen Camilla. That designation endures beyond Charles's reign, and it carries the dignity and family standing that the tradition of surviving consorts has always preserved. None of that is taken from her. But here's the detail that everyone missed at the time. The title and the institutional apparatus are two entirely different things, and only one of them transfers automatically under the new rule. What Camilla does not automatically keep is a separate institutional household. No independent staff structure, no parallel working court with its own budget and communications office, no automatic budget line for independent operations in the next reign. The institutional machinery, the apparatus that transforms a title from an honorific into an operational center of influence, does not transfer automatically. It cannot, under the principle William and Catherine have formalized. Her role at Windsor, under this framework, becomes ceremonial and familial rather than institutional or political. She attends. She holds her title with the dignity the tradition requires, but she does not operate a parallel court or represent a second institutional voice inside the monarchy's operational structure. For anyone who has watched Camilla's journey from the most controversial figure in the royal family to a queen consort who won genuine public respect, this is a significant recalibration. She earned her title through years of careful, disciplined public service. That journey is real, and the title it produced is real. But the message embedded in William and Catherine's principle is equally clear. The era of a second power center at Windsor ends with Charles's reign. Camilla's title survives the transition. Her parallel court does not. Imagine building an entire second chapter of your life around one person. Their elevation, their recognition, their place in history, and then watching a constitutional principle quietly redraw the boundaries of everything you built in a way you cannot publicly contest. That is the position Charles now occupies. And the word Windsor insiders use for his response is not anger, not defiance. The word is frozen. Charles built his second chapter around Camilla. Her elevation from the most publicly despised figure in the royal family to queen consort was not accidental. It was a sustained, deliberate campaign spanning decades. He fought for her title, her institutional standing, her place inside the monarchy's formal structure at significant cost to his political capital and public goodwill. Camilla's position is, in a very real sense, the defining achievement of Charles's personal legacy. And here is what Charles cannot bring himself to accept. William and Catherine's rule does not overturn anything inside Charles's reign. Camilla retains full queen consort standing and all current household structures for as long as Charles is sovereign. Nothing changes today. The principle only takes institutional force at the moment of transition, and that is precisely what makes it so difficult for Charles to contest. He cannot argue the rule harms him now. He can only watch it take shape, knowing exactly what it means the moment his reign ends. To publicly oppose a constitutional household principle that Catherine has applied to herself, a principle grounded in clear institutional logic, Charles would have to expose himself as protecting Camilla's personal interests over the structural integrity of the monarchy. He would have to argue that his heir's constitutional principle is wrong, while simultaneously revealing that his objection is personal rather than institutional. That argument destroys itself the moment it is made. His silence is not passivity. It is the recognition that there is no move available to him that does not cost more than it gains. He is caught between loyalty to Camilla, the defining personal commitment of his life, and the impossibility of arguing against his own heir's structural logic without undermining his own reign in the process. Some inside his circle believe he should push back. Others know it is already over. The clock was already ticking. Charles just couldn't hear it yet. And the power dynamic emerging from this moment is unmistakable. William is already governing the future. Charles knows it. The frozen silence at the centre of this story is the clearest evidence that the transition of power inside the British monarchy has already begun. Not at the moment of succession, but right now. That frozen silence does not linger in the corridors of Windsor without consequence, because on the other side of it, something entirely different is being built. There is a blueprint being drawn inside Windsor, and it has been taking shape for longer than most people realise. William has consistently signalled a leaner, more focused monarchy, fewer working royals, tighter institutional lines, a cleaner public identity. The vision is not new. But the decisions being made right now are the first ones that carry real, permanent, institutional weight. The consort household rule fits inside that vision with precision that is not accidental. One sovereign, one working court, one clear line of authority, with no parallel structures competing for influence, and no second institutional voice creating ambiguity about who speaks for the monarchy. The annual cost of running two fully operational royal households is not a rounding error. It is a structural drain measured in tens of millions, and William's model eliminates it entirely. That's not a typo, by the way. This is architecture. William is not managing a crisis. He is designing a reign. And the distinction between those two things is everything. Crisis management is reactive and temporary. Architectural design is deliberate and permanent. The cancelled summit, the locked communications, the finalised principle, Catherine's self-inclusion, none of these are reactive moves. They are the careful, methodical construction of a constitutional framework that will define the British monarchy for generations. Catherine is not a passive partner inside this vision. She is its co-architect, and her willingness to place herself inside the rule she helped create is the clearest possible signal of that. The institution will not be shaped by personal loyalty or private arrangements. It will be shaped by principle, and both William and Catherine are building that principle right now, one decision at a time. But this wasn't just about the consort household rule anymore. The entire future shape of the British monarchy, who holds power, how it is structured, and what it stands for, was now on the table. Walk the corridors of Windsor right now, and the atmosphere insiders describe is not chaos. It is not open conflict. It is something more unsettling than either of those things. It is quiet inevitability. The sense that a transition already underway cannot be stopped, cannot be reversed, and cannot be meaningfully contested, only navigated. Those close to the situation describe a palace where everyone knows the transition is coming, not as a distant hypothetical, as a present reality already reshaping relationships, loyalties, and institutional alignments inside every household at Windsor. The question is no longer whether William's vision will define the next monarchy, The question is how each person positions themselves relative to that vision before the transition formally arrives. And the timing of what happened next? Almost too perfect, because the sequence of events, the cancelled summit, the discovered lawyer, the locked down communications, the finalized principle, did not unfold randomly. Windsor insiders say the sequence was deliberate, each step closed an opening that Camilla's allies might otherwise have used. The lawyer incident provided immediate justification for locking down communications. The locked communications prevented any preemptive documentation of arrangements that might complicate the new rule. The finalized principle arrived after the openings had already been closed. The sequence leaves no gap, no ambiguity, and no viable avenue for challenge. Camilla's circle reportedly received the news with controlled resignation. The fight over the lawyer and the documents was the last move available to them, and it failed. There is no subsequent move that does not require publicly contesting a constitutional principle that Catherine has applied to herself, and that argument, as everyone inside Windsor understands, is not winnable. William's household is described as calm, methodical, and entirely confident in the legal and constitutional grounding of the principle. There is no triumphalism. There is simply the quiet confidence of people who have built something on solid ground and know it will hold. Charles's inner circle is divided. Some believe he should push back, that silence signals weakness, and some public expression of his position is necessary to preserve his dignity. Others know it is already over, that any public challenge would cost more than it could possibly gain, and that the only rational path is to manage the transition with as much grace as the circumstances allow. There is a gap between the present and the transition. And inside that gap, the real tension of this story lives. The principle is finalized. The rule is clear. But it only takes full legal and institutional force at the precise moment William becomes sovereign. And between now and that moment, a great deal can happen. Camilla retains full queen consort, standing for the entirety of Charles's reign. All current household structures remain intact. Her staff, her budget, her institutional arrangements, none of these are altered by the principle William and Catherine have established, because the principle applies to the next reign, not the current one. Charles is still king. Camilla is still queen consort. And the apparatus of her current position remains fully operational. That is the transition gap. And it is where the most consequential maneuvering of this entire story is likely to occur. The question is whether Charles or Camilla's remaining allies attempt to formalize arrangements during the current reign that would preempt or complicate the new rule when the transition arrives. Letters, patent, formal designations, documented precedents that might be cited to argue for continuity of household arrangements beyond the transition. These are the tools available inside the gap, and everyone who understands how the palace operates knows they exist. William's team has reportedly anticipated exactly this. The locked-down communications that followed the lawyer incident are not simply a response to that specific breach. They are a structural measure designed to prevent any preemptive documentation of arrangements that might complicate the principle when it takes force. Every channel through which such arrangements might be quietly formalized has been identified and restricted. The transition gap is where the real tension lives. The principle is in place. The communications are locked. The rule is finalized. But the gap remains, and the gap is where the final moves of this story will be made. What happens inside that gap, and whether William's team has truly closed every opening, will determine whether the principle holds cleanly at the moment of transition or arrives under challenge. But the version you've heard? That's not the full picture. Catherine's agreement to apply the rule to herself is not just strategic. It is a statement, deliberate, institutional in its implications, and deeply revealing about the kind of queen she intends to be. This is not the action of someone playing defense. This is a declaration of values, made at a moment when the stakes are as high as they get inside the British monarchy. Catherine has consistently positioned herself as an institution-first royal throughout her time inside the family. duty over personal advantage. The monarchy's long-term health over short-term political convenience. Her public role has been defined by discipline, restraint, and a clear-eyed understanding of what the institution requires, not what any individual inside it might prefer. Royal historians point to a pattern stretching back to her earliest years as Princess of Wales. Every major decision Catherine has made in her public capacity has prioritized the Crown's coherence over her own comfort or convenience. The Earthshot Prize, her early years initiative, her deliberate positioning alongside William during the Commonwealth tours, each of these reflects the same institutional logic now embedded in the consort household rule. She has never deviated from it, not once. The same decision that built Catherine's reputation as an institution-first royal was about to define the entire future of the British Crown. Just when Camilla's team thought they'd contained the damage, Catherine's self-inclusion arrived and removed the last viable argument against the principle entirely. And for Camilla herself, that moment closes something that cannot be reopened. The journey from the most despised woman in Britain to Queen Consort was extraordinary. The discipline it required, the patience, the decades of quiet endurance under public hostility, that story is real and it is not small. But the constitutional principle now in place does not weigh personal journeys. It weighs institutional structures. And under that measure, the parallel court Camilla's allies fought to preserve has already been decided against. The emotional cost of that is not nothing. It simply cannot change the outcome. By stepping inside the rule herself, Catherine signals something the palace has been watching for years, and the public is only now beginning to understand. The next monarchy will be organized around institutional principle, clear, universal, and applied without exception to everyone, including the woman who helped write it. What makes this moment historically significant is not simply what Catherine did, it is what she gave up in doing it. She voluntarily constrained her own future institutional power at the precise moment she was consolidating it. No queen consort in modern British history has made that trade so explicitly, so publicly, and so irrevocably. Constitutional scholars inside and outside the palace have noted that the self-inclusion creates a documented precedent, one that will be cited in every future discussion of surviving consort arrangements for generations. Catherine did not just accept a rule, she became the rule's most powerful proof of principle. That is the clearest sign yet, that Catherine is not waiting to become queen. She is already acting like one. The British monarchy is entering a new era, and the architects of that era have already made their most important decision. One sovereign, one court, one future. As of August 2026, the principle is finalised, the communications are locked, and the transition gap is where every remaining move will be made. This story isn't over, not even close. Subscribe and stay inside it.